Hi, let's talk about cell membranes, right? This is really the kind of like the birth of the last major topic we need to cover. So we'll talk about cell membranes, what they're like, how they control stuff coming in and out, and some of those processes. So we're going to break up the notes here into two different lectures. And so this is the first one, and it goes through number 9 of our notes. So after number 9, we'll stop and we'll do part 2 of the video lecture later on. So anyways, number 1, what structure surrounds all cells? You guessed it, a cell membrane. There it is. Thin flexible barrier, okay? Some cells are also surrounded by, around the cell membrane, they have a cell wall. So another strong supporting layer. So you guys know that some kinds of cells have cell walls and some don't. Plant cells do, animals don't. But all cells have cell membranes. Okay, so let's talk about the functions of cell membranes. What are the things that they do? 1, they control and regulate what comes in and out of a cell, right? We'll talk about how that works coming up. Also, because they're a protective surface, they protect the cell, the inside, right? You got to protect what's inside the cell from the outside, and the cell membrane is a barrier then. They also give it some structure, right? So it provides some support and physical structure for the cells. There you go. So I'll have you look into this more. Here's the intro. Here's how cell membranes are built. All right, we have this thing called a phospholipid bilayer. So the next slide, I'll show you a single phospholipid, right? But it's got this circle up top and then 2 little tails that hang down, all right? So the circle on top is the phosphate, which you've seen in other contexts before, and then hanging down are these 2 lipid tails. They're these little fatty acid tails, okay? Which are hydrophobic. They don't like water. So when you put a bunch of these phospholipids in water, they automatically form this exact way, right? Because one end wants to be touching the water, that's the phosphate end, and the lipid end does not want to be touching the water, so they touch each other, and then you have a lipid bilayer. So there are a few layers, labeling parts on number 4 that I'd like you to get. So A is one of these things that is a protein channel. We'll talk about why we need these later, but it basically is a doorway from one side of the membrane to the other, from out to in, or vice versa. So it lets bigger things through, basically. B is just a bunch of embedded proteins on the surface and sometimes go through the cell membrane. There are a lot of purposes for that. Letter C are these little carbohydrate chains, little carbohydrates attached to the proteins, and they help with communication and signaling. And then D are these phospholipids. You can refer to D as the lipid bilayer, okay? So there's our little labeling for number 4, and we'll be looking into this in some more detail later. Okay, a word about these phospholipids again. So I mentioned hydrophobic a minute ago. So hydrophobic means afraid of water. That's what it literally means. Hydrophilic means it loves water. Right? So if you've ever tried to mix oil and water before, you know they don't mix. It's because oil is hydrophobic. So this is the way these things organize themselves in a solution of water. Because you get the hydrophobic ends trying to point away from the water and the hydrophilic ends pointing towards the water. Forms a membrane. All right, number 5 says, what is the function of a cell wall? All right, so the cell wall is support and protection. Cell wall is thick, right? And it helps. It's the reason why you can build houses out of wood, because the wood as a plant has lots of strong cell walls, right? So it's better to build your house out of something strong than something weak and floppy. You wouldn't want to build your house out of water balloons. That would be an awful idea. All right, so who has cell walls? Well, we know plants have cell walls, but algae do. A lot of fungi, right? So mushrooms and their relatives. And then a lot of prokaryotes, which are bacteria. They have cell walls also. So a lot of creatures have cell walls. You definitely don't see animals on that list, though. Okay, so as we move in towards transport, I want to prep with a little bit of vocab, and then the next section will be about, the next video lecture will be about how stuff is transported across that cell membrane. So first we got to know what a solution is. So number 7, it's just when 2 or more things mix up, all right? So a solution, we usually talk about, there's a solution of like tea in the bottom left of your screen, right? So you've got particles of tea mixed with the water, it's a solution. So what are the components of a solution? Number 8, you have something called a solute, right? Which is the substance dissolved, the substance being dissolved, and the solvent, which is doing the dissolving, okay? So the solute is what is dissolved in the water. You dump a bunch of sugar in your tea and stir it up until that sugar dissolves. Well, the sugar was the solute and the tea was the solvent, right? Anyways, you also have something, number 9, what is the concentration referred to? We need to have a clear understanding of this. So a concentration refers to how much solute there is in our solution. All right, so you've got some iced tea and you want to sweeten it. You put 1 teaspoon in, well, that's going to be a pretty low concentration of sugar. You put a half cup in because you like that sweet. That's going to be a much higher concentration of sugar and will taste much sweeter, but perhaps you're a hummingbird and that's what you need to survive.